Thank you for tuning in to the Angel Freedman Show. I am Angel Freedman. Today on the Angel Freedman Show, we will talk with lawyer and mediator Howard Warren about separation and divorce. If you have any questions, please tweet them in to alltalktv.com. Howard Warren was called to the bar in Ontario in 1977. He has been practicing law continuously since then in both family law and civil litigation. In 2009, Howard studied mediation at Harvard University and in the program of negotiation. He then completed both the required course on power imbalances in family law and also the Ontario Proof Certificate course for family law arbitrators through the University of Waterloo. In March 2010, Howard was appointed a dispute resolution officer of the Newmarket Court in York Region by the Superior Court of Ontario. Howard is the proud father of 4 sons and is the founder of Warren Mediation Group, Inc. Thank you so much, Howard, for being here today.
Good morning.
Good morning. So we seem to have a few questions for you. Maybe we'll start off with a question from a caller, actually. Let's start with Kathleen from Keswick. She asks, my husband and I would like to share a lawyer. Is that possible?
It's not generally considered a good idea unless it's going to be a joint application for divorce, because the lawyer's put in a conflict situation. Is he representing the wife? Is he representing the husband? Whose interest does he prefer? So generally it's not a good idea.
Okay, that's good. So Howard, what are the different ways that someone can deal with family law issues?
There are many different ways. The best way is if the 2 parties can work everything out themselves, obviously. If that doesn't work, then they can hopefully lawyers to negotiate a resolution. There's collaborative law, there's mediation, arbitration, and of course there's litigation.
Right. And how does somebody get a hold of you? I know we have your website on. What are other ways? Maybe give out your phone number? Yeah.
Email address. I respond to emails very promptly. One problem I hear from people who come from other lawyers is that they can't get in touch with their lawyer. Okay. That's never an issue with me. I have my BlackBerry with me at all times. If someone sends me an email, they generally get a response within an hour.
Okay. So which is better, mediation, arbitration, or litigation?
It sort of depends, which is not the answer you're probably looking for. Mediation is a very good method of resolving problems if both parties are motivated to settle. And you have a good mediator, you can then come to a resolution with much less cost and much faster. If it's not, mediation arbitration is always a better mode of resolution because it encourages the parties to be fair and to mediate responsibly. Because they know that if the mediation fails, the mediator then puts on another hat and becomes the arbitrator and makes a decision. And then with litigation, I mean, you do get a resolution as well. It tends to be more costly and more time consuming.
Right. You know, as a counselor, I see a lot of families come in and tell me that they have joint custody. And Howard, they talk about co-parenting. And I see a lot of families who didn't really co-parent in the marriage. So now it seems that we're asking people to co-parent out of the marriage, which would be, you'd have to be quite mature to put your children first. Do you see more and more parents going towards sort of, arguing, going to court instead of trying to be mature and co-parent these great kids?
I think co-parenting is a wonderful thing, frankly. When the marriage ends, people are more motivated to spend more time with their children, especially dads who may not have spent as much time then, didn't realize how important that was, and the light bulb sort of goes off, and they realize, yeah, I want to be involved in my child's life. And so I think co-parenting is great because it tends to get fathers, who generally the ones who leave, more involved with their kids. So I see it as a good thing.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think it's a great thing. So let's ask you another really good question. Let's ask you a question from Norman from Stouffville. He asks, we have no children and are amicable. What do you suggest, Howard? How do we proceed?
Hi, Norman. If there are no issues of property, it's a very straightforward matter. You can just agree, you can put things on paper and then incorporate it into an order. very straightforward, especially if there are no children.
Okay, and what happens at the end of mediation if you don't reach a deal?
Well, as I said, if you signed a mediation arbitration agreement, then you go right into arbitration, and the mediator becomes an arbitrator. Or you can have an agreement that says if the mediation fails, we'll go to another arbitrator, who's preferably named in the agreement. And then you get finality, you get a solution, because if the mediation fails, you're sort of in limbo unless you're compelled to go into arbitration.
I should have asked you this question first. How do you start litigation or mediation arbitration?
Well, you start mediation arbitration by contacting a mediator arbitrator and signing a mediation arbitration agreement. And you, of course, need to find a mediator arbitrator. And the best method of that is word of mouth. If you know someone who's been to one and has had a good experience. With litigation, you start off with an application to the court. Okay, and is the order of the arbitrator as binding as that of a judge? Absolutely. The only thing an arbitrator can't do in family law is grant you a divorce, and that's a very straightforward matter. But the arbitrator can make orders regarding custody, child support, spousal support, division of assets without any problem at all, and it is as binding as though a judge made it. So it's very powerful. So it is, because I get that question a lot, so it is kind of like a judge, like someone like you can make decisions. Yes. Wow. So when did that come about? Was this new, old? I'm learning myself. Well, the Arbitration Act has been around for a while, so it's been here for a while. It's just becoming more known now because it's becoming more popular, and the reason is that particularly in York region, there's a real backlog in the courts. You can't get to see a judge quickly unless it's an emergency, and the designation emergency is very narrow. You've got to have a spouse at the airport pretty much taking the child out of the country before it's considered an emergency. So getting to see a judge is not simple, whereas getting to see a mediator is usually much quicker. I see. Is there a reason why there's such a backlog? Is divorce on the rise? We don't have enough judges in York region. Is that right? Contrast that with Toronto. You have many, many judges, and there's no waiting at all, really. Very minimal waiting. You know, I blog almost every day, and I'm noticing more and more that divorce is really not normalized, even though it's normal. If half of the society is getting divorced and separated, I wonder why. I mean, it's a large question, but why is it that it's not normal? Why haven't we normalized and have sort of the toolbox to get divorced? It seems that, friends or family are very hard on people. You're getting divorced, almost like you've, committed a crime. But it's not a crime. People have, broke up with boyfriends. They've broken up with spouses for years. But it seems these days it's not oh, that's wonderful, you chose happiness. You don't hear that. Or good for you, you'll move on. Or what you hear is, oh, your children. And then I tell people, well, if you stay for your children, you're showing them a disservice. That if you stay with your spouse and you're unhappy and loveless and lifeless marriage, that it's okay. What do you think about that? Well, I think that with counseling, certainly a lot of the problems can be resolved, and you tend to hear those comments from people who haven't been through it before. Once you've been through it, you understand that sometimes it's necessary to cut the cord and let go. Right. I know, because I think marriage should be fun, shouldn't it, Howard? I always think you're supposed to cook together, play, kiss, everything, be together. If you're not even talking to your spouse, to me, I think you're showing your children that it's okay to be unhappy in life. And really, is it? Yeah, sometimes people say, well, we're staying together for the children, but that's probably the opposite of what they're really doing. The children aren't seeing a good relationship. I know. Did you see my face? Because I blog about that all the time. I'm like, you know what? Actually, you'd be showing your children that it's okay to leave a relationship. It doesn't mean you're not mom and dad anymore, but you're leaving a relationship that didn't work, right? Absolutely. So, yeah, no, it's interesting. Okay, so let's go to another person that wrote us in. Let's go to Jack. Jack has a really interesting question from Richmond Hill. My wife and I have been married for 30 years,
and now we are going to separate. We are not talking, and I am afraid to leave the house because I am told if I leave, I will lose what I am entitled to. What are your thoughts, Howard?
It's always best to stay in the house unless there's a lot of antagonism and there's a possibility of the police becoming involved. If the police get involved, it's a very bad situation. They may take one of the parties out in handcuffs and prohibit him or her from coming back to the house, generally him, and then you're separated from your children. It's not a good situation. If you can get along reasonably and remain in the house, that's always wise.
So Jack wouldn't lose anything if he moved out.
Wouldn't lose anything.
But there was talk
except he loses contact with all of his assets and possibly his children.
Oh.
So that's a problem.
That's a problem. Okay, but if they're not getting along, but would he lose? Like, let's say his wife sells the house. I mean, will he still get half the house?
She can only sell the house if he agrees legally.
Okay, let's say they do. We'll just put that scenario in for Jack. So he could move out though and live in an apartment, and when she sells the house, he could possibly get some of it.
When they sell the house,
yes. Sorry, you're right. Help me with the language. You're right. Okay, so when they sell the house,
he's not giving up any right to those monies.
I guess that's what my question is. He's not giving up any right.
Because in order to sign the listing agreement, they both have to sign. In order to sign the sale agreement, they both have to sign.
Right.
And the lawyer who gets the money has to distribute equally or in accordance with what they both agree.
Right. And you have something called Ask Howard. I wanted to bring that up. So people can email you or...
I have another email address. It's hwarren@askhoward.com.
Right. I ask you questions all the time now, especially because I'm dealing and counseling with separation divorce. I'm reading a lot of stuff right now.
And I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. I know. I appreciate that. Okay, so let's go into probably one more question until break. So what if the arbitrator makes a mistake?
Well, arbitrators are human, but so are judges. Judges make mistakes too, and that's why we have courts of appeal. And in Ontario, we have the Ontario Court of Appeal, which is a wonderful bench, and they're there to fix mistakes. So if the arbitrator makes a mistake, the other party can appeal.
Okay.
And same thing as in a court case. If the judge makes a mistake and it happens, you can go to the Court of Appeal and it can be fixed up.
Wow. Okay, so I guess we'll go to break. I want to thank Howard Warren for sponsoring our show today, and we'll be right back with more questions for Howard. Thank you.
Hi, I'm David Grossman, also known as the Mortgage Mensch, and I've been looking for years for the right product to offer our American friends. I'm here in Graham Tobe's office in Toronto at Ontario Wealth Management. Graham, why are you loaning money to Americans?
The opportunities are superior to Canada, particularly with respect to borrowers, properties, and yields.
What's a typical loan look like?
Between $1 and $5 million.
The word is you can move very fast on a loan. Is that true?
We've closed a deal in 5 business days.
What sorts of properties do you loan on?
Retail centers, multi-unit apartment houses, and mixed-use properties.
So you've got the money, you've got a fund with about $80 million in it and growing.
Yes, I do.
That's terrific. What kind of down payment is needed to qualify?
On acquisitions, we require 35%. We also do discounted payouts and short sales, and typically we'll still require fresh capital of 35%.
So it's short-term financing?
It's 1 to 2 year loans with easy prepayment provisions. We call it bridge lending.
Welcome back. We're here talking about separation and divorce with lawyer and mediator Howard Warren. Howard, we have another question from Twitter saying, from Shazia, why do we have family laws if they are not enforced? That's one. And then kind of going on is, in other words, why do we need to go to court, spend thousands and thousands of dollars to get even a fraction of that law enforced?
A cynical question, okay. We have laws that serve the province generally very well, and they certainly can't deal with every possible problem, but by and large they work very well. And there are mechanisms to enforce. Generally, the people who feel that the laws aren't being enforced are fathers, because the enforcement procedures for enforcing access aren't nearly as strong as for enforcing child support and spousal support, for example. So in support, you've got the Family Responsibility Office on board, and they enforce all of the collection. But there's nothing really to enforce access, and that's often a problem. But I'd say by and large, the system works pretty well.
Yeah, that's when I would bring in that word maturity again, because it seems that it's, well, you know, I'm just talking about from the clients and from the group I run in Richmond Hill on separation divorce, but it seems that, you know, there's a lot of anger. I'm sure you see it. I like the rolling of the eyes. Yes, there's a lot of anger, and that's where I would enforce the, you know, come to counseling, come to a group program. I run a separation and divorce self-help group every 2 weeks, and it's on my website, angelfreedman.com. And also in Toronto, there's another group in Bloor West Village run by Bernie Golden, and he runs one, I think, every 2 weeks as well. It's good to talk about it. I think that a lot of parents are going through this on their own without support from family and friends. And again, friends can be very judgmental to, you know, to the people getting divorced. Right?
It's interesting you mentioned anger management, because the criminal courts, the criminal court judges have a mandate to send people off to anger management if there's been an assault, for example.
Okay.
The family courts don't use that at all, and I think it's unfortunate, because people come out of divorce often very angry.
Absolutely.
Especially dads, because they tend to be out of the house. They're sometimes not getting their access, but they're having to pay their support, and that leads to a lot of anger. Yeah. And I think if the judges were in the family courts were ruling more that dad should take this anger management course, I think that would be good for him and certainly good for the kids.
Right. Control. It's probably my favorite word in separation divorce. Control. Who's going to have control? You see it all the time. I hear it all the time in groups. I could have 15 people, and everyone is kind of sitting like this, going, like they're angry. You know what? Anger's an okay emotion. I'm okay with it as long as you deal with it and talk about it. But control. What do you do with those parents like that just will not, you know, put those kids first? What do we do?
Anger it can be very useful, especially for women who have been dominated through the marriage and aren't yet angry enough to fight back. So it can be very constructive. Control is a real problem as well, and that's why we have systems in place for mediation arbitration, where you have to go through a program to the arbitrator has to satisfy himself or herself that it's a level playing field. And if there's been one party that's dominating the other, they may not be able to negotiate fairly. So for example, if they come to the arbitration and the husband has said to the wife beforehand, by the way, if you, I know you're asking for custody, if you get it, I'll kill you. So how do they fairly negotiate or even argue their case under that kind of a threat? And it's important that the arbitrator recognize and determine that that's going on. You can have parties arriving at different times or doing whatever you can to make sure that it's a safe environment.
You know, it's sad because, you know, I hear it all the time, and what makes me, what hurts me the most and what I work on with moms or dads in counseling is, you know, when the kids are at the door, it's not the greatest time to call your husband any names or your wife any names, really. It just hurts those kids. I mean, you've already, for me, if somebody comes to me and says, I just got divorced a year ago, I usually think they got divorced 5 years ago, probably 10 years ago, who knows? It doesn't usually just happen on a whim, right? So I always say children have been watching this separation for months, years, who knows? So I always ask them, please bite your tongue and, phone or write your, the father or mother of the child instead of doing it at the door.
It's so hard. It's so hard to put away those emotions. It's such an emotional situation, and some parents push the other parent's button intentionally, and that's unfortunate, especially if the kids are seeing it. But it happens all the time.
It does, and I think it's detrimental to children, and that's why I guess I'm going out there into the world trying to normalize it, because it is normal. And if we have more people like you, or these groups that we run, or counseling that are specifically working with people who are separated and divorced, I think that we'd have a broader, maybe, education for people. So it's like, yes, I'm getting separated. I don't have to hate him. Because you hear that.
There's a program in place in Toronto and York region and other places where before you can start a divorce proceeding or an application, you must go through and watch a video and some presentations on negotiating reasonably and not involving the children. So it's coming along.
Oh, that's good. No, I know there is more and more, and it is good. I guess we're going to build that big red toolbox. So let's ask you some more questions. How does a person choose a mediator?
As I said earlier, it's word of mouth is the best way.
Okay.
You can go on the internet and find someone who's a mediator, but that doesn't tell you much about the personality. Interview them. Go to the office and say, I want to talk to you about your methods, because there are different ways of mediating, and you don't know which way that mediator works, so it's important to know. So interview them, and word of mouth is the best.
I like that. People always ask me, so what's your theory-based, Angel? And I'm on, and of course I always tell them it's choice theory. Okay, that's good. I like that. Interview them. I usually get interviewed on the phone. How long will you do this for? Do you believe in this? So what kind of mediator is best?
Okay. There are two primary kinds of mediators. There's evaluative and facilitative. And a evaluative mediator basically tells you what the law is and what the solution should be. And a facilitative one lets you negotiate and negotiate and negotiate. And they're polar opposites. And my approach is sort of a hybrid, where I'll assist you with what I think the result should be, but I want you to get there yourself. Because if the parties create the solution, it's likely to last.
All right, let's go to another person. Let's go, this is a question for me. From Bianca from Richmond Health. Angel, I read about your family plans and how you go into families' homes to help parents. Can you talk about that a little more? Well, hello, Bianca, and thank you for asking that question. So what I do, I guess it's sort of like a parenting coordinator, and we'll talk to Howard about this right after I answer this, is I go into the homes and I teach parents how to have family meetings. I also help them create chore charts and rule lists, because I believe that in separation, divorce, and also in just regular mom and dad situations, that having a schedule and routine really helps children. Proper bedtimes, chores, feeling part of the home. And as one mom once said, Angel, you take the crazy out of our house. And this is a mom going through separation. And I can talk to both parents at the same time, or I go into the individual's home separately, as long as both individuals agree to a parenting plan with me. And let's talk about that for a second, Howard. Parenting coordinator. I hear a lot of people are on a waiting list for a parenting coordinator. What's going on?
Well, there are parenting coordinators around, but there aren't that many good ones, frankly. And it's a really important job, because you tend to normalize the relationship, and that's really important. There's only so much a judge or an arbitrator can do to resolve situations. It's really up to the parties to work with each other and bring the temperature down and help the children through this. And parenting coordinator is a very valuable tool to achieve that. But you need the right person. Just like there are different types of mediators, there are different types of parenting coordinators. Some of them are hands-on, some of them are too involved, I would say, and some don't have the skills they need to do it.
Well, after teaching parenting for almost 16 years now, going into people's homes, I really see the disconnect that they had in their marriage and parenting. And now we're working with two people who possibly could be angry and are not happy, with what's going on, let's say, in the law part. But when I say the children's names, I really see the change in mom and dad. So I'm like, okay, what does a family meeting look like? And, at your house, Dad, and your house, Mom. And I may talk to the parents first and then bring children in. And it seems that everybody gets a softer heart, Yeah. No, it's, I'm really enjoying that part more than, I love the counseling too, but it's nice to see children happy. They love it. They're like, yeah, I can wash the floor, Angel. And, and I get them journaling. I give children I call it their angel book, and they write questions for the next time I come over. And it gets sort of the whole family healing.
Yeah, it's useful when the kids have a voice. Mm-hmm. And the only way they get that in litigation is through the Office of the Children's Lawyer, which is a provincial facility.
Right.
That's the only way they get a voice. Where either there's a report done by a social worker, or they may have representation by a lawyer appointed for them. Mm-hmm. But this is much more hands-on, certainly more grassroots level.
Yeah, well, it's kind, and I believe that children love to be part of the house, right? They love that. So at mom's or dad's. Yeah. Again, it's just teaching parents how to parent, and then also how to be a separated parent. I try to make it as simple as possible. I, tell mom or dad what to buy for the chore chart and what chores are on the house, and everyone feels a little bit more comfortable.
It's too bad there isn't that available going into the marriage or going into having kids. You just go and have kids, but nobody tells you how to do it.
I know. Well, I took many parenting courses, I have to tell you, when I decided, okay, it's time to teach it. All right, so again, we're going to take a break and thank Howard Warren for sponsoring our show today, and we'll be right back with more questions for Howard.
Animated by one supreme being, which is the God.
We don't do this in a sense of feminism, rather this is...
The interesting thing is that the political will seems to have come.
You can find it only in Jews and Palestinians.
A very good job at keeping it under control.
That liberating people who are thought to be unjust because of social, economic, or political conditions.
That time I thought it was so scary.
Officials,
everything you do.
When you know it, so you...
Proxies of the Vision 27 meeting together.
As they began wrong things and slow.
Hello and welcome to Mensch Life. I'm David Grossman.
Welcome everybody to the Anna Adi Show.
Welcome to Passion Point. My name is Irene Becker.
Hi, I'm Sari Colt, and welcome to Chew on This.
Hi, I'm Gila Marto, and welcome to Gila and Guests. Welcome to Ladies with Wisdom.
Welcome to Sketch It Up.
I'm Susan Radoshevek, and this is Corner Office.
I'm Doris Epstein, and remember to be a mensch.
Sometimes I hate being
being Batman.
You just admitted being Batman. You just admitted it.
No, guys. I said I hate it being a fat man.
No, that was
being a fat man.
It was a hard beat. It was a hard beat.
That was all Bat.
Forget it.
Yeah.
Alfred, it happened again.
Dr. Freedman.
I don't know how he
Welcome back. We're talking about separation and divorce with lawyer and mediator Howard Warren. Howard, let's go to another person who's called in, Henry from Stouffville. How long does the legal or mediation process last?
Hi, Henry. Mediation lasts as long as the parties are negotiating or until they come to a solution. Sometimes it breaks down, and then you go into arbitration. And if there are lots of issues, it's going to take longer. A simple matter of only deciding a division of a house may not take very long, the division of the proceeds of the sale of the house. But if you add children to that mix and support issues, it's more complicated. In litigation, it's much more structured in litigation. You start out with processes that take time and cost money. So you start with an application, then you go to a case conference, you have settlement conference, you may have motions, questioning, trial management conference, settlement, exit pretrial, and then a trial. So it's a whole long process, and it takes a long time to get through it. But you can settle at any time, and the process ends.
Mm-hmm. So what sort of cost should someone expect in litigation or mediation or arbitration, which is something people ask, I'm sure, all the time?
They ask all the time, and it's impossible to answer, unfortunately, because that's like saying, how much is a car? Well, is it a used car? Is it a new car? Is it a small car? Is it a big car? Is it a convertible? You just don't know. The thing that costs in litigation and mediation is time. You're spending time getting to the trial, or you're spending the mediator's time. When you go to court, the judge's time is free. You don't pay anything for that, but you pay for your lawyer's time. With mediation arbitration, you pay for the mediator arbitrator, but you tend to get a solution more quickly. So in the long run, it's more cost effective. But you can't tell going in how much it's going to cost because you don't know how long it's going to last.
Right. Again, using that mature word. So if, let's say, people are that other catchphrase, amicable. So if they're amicable and mature, how long, could it cost? Of course, it'll cost a whole lot less.
Of course. And it's not always maturity. It's some parties take a harder line to things.
Right.
Some things matter more to one party. So when you're dividing up assets, both parties want the TV. So how do you resolve that? And that one being trite, but when you're talking about custody and access, those are difficult things, and they take a lot of time. And both parties want as much time with their kids as possible in an ideal situation.
Right.
And it takes time to resolve that.
I guess what I mean when I use the word maturity, what I mean is to really, again, put those kids first. To say, okay, it's funny because you stay in your marriage for children, but when you decide to leave your marriage, why is it it's even worse, for the children?
Well, you're saying put the kids first, but what does that really mean? Because both parties have it in their mind that the children spending time with them is in the children's best interest.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't really resolve anything to say put the kids first. Yes, it's wise when you're not arguing in front of them, put them first. That's fine. But when it comes to a resolution of custody and access, putting them first doesn't solve anything because each party feels that they're going to do best for their child.
Right, but maybe that's why a lot of people do that 1 week on, 1 week off program, so that they both spend the same amount of time with the child. Is that working?
That's called week about, and that often works where both parties are really involved with their children, want to spend time with them, and they're not doing it just to spite the other party. So week about is great. It's certainly good for the children. And week about can have different forms. For example, the parents can move out as long as they each have somewhere else to go,
Right.
and the children stay in the house. That gives them the continuity. Or they can move between mom's house and dad's house. So there are different ways of week-about.
Right. I guess that's what I mean by children first, with thinking that. And again, like I said, at the door, not swearing at mom or dad. Or if you're on your cell phone, remembering that 2 or 3 little people in the back hear you talking. You know, like, and I mean, I've heard children say, I really don't like it when dad calls mom an idiot at the door. You know, like, I really don't think that is appropriate. And
because she's still their mom.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Even though you don't like her anymore, and you don't want to be married to her, and you don't have to be, she's still their mom.
I know.
And he's still their dad.
I know, and I said this last week. Pick a time where you and their dad, I told their mom this, went out for dinner and laughed. But put that in your heart, because everyone went out for dinner in your marriage at some point and laughed.
I often use, remember, this is the woman you married and promised to love and cherish for the rest of your life. You were in love with her.
Yeah.
Keep that in the back of your mind somewhere.
Yeah, not like, it's like, what is that saying, you know, love your children more than you hate your spouse, your ex-spouse. And that's the other piece. I feel very uncomfortable when people call them ex-husband, ex-wife. It's kinder to say, you know, the children's mom, the children's dad. Ex seems so harsh. So I've got the group now, and they'll stop with the ex, because it is harsh. So you say, oh, you know, the children's dad or the children's mom.
No, that is nicer.
It is nicer, and it is all in language, you know, and it's not like, you know, you're going to your father's this weekend. Like, you know, how about, like, hey, you're going to dad's this weekend. And one more thing, too, I wanted to ask you. Emails. Badgering on and on and on emails. Like, I get clients who show me 10 pages of one question. Do you get these emails?
All the time. And the one thing that you have to remember when you're sending emails, if you say something, it's gone. If you write it in an email, it's there. Yeah. And the judge can look at it, and the other lawyers can look at it, and the media arbitrator is going to look at it. Everybody sees it. It's permanent.
Right.
Don't say stupid things in email. I say that all the time to my clients.
Please, let's tell everyone. Because I see everybody holding their BlackBerries, even when they come into counseling, and they're like, oh, he just wrote, or oh, she just wrote. And I'm like, you know what? These, I think, might be the worst things that ever happened for people who are separated and divorced, because text messages are rampant. What do you tell them about that? Like, you know, just put that away. What do you think?
Talk.
Talk, yeah, if you can.
Nicely.
I know. Remember that time you went out for dinner, right? That's right. Well, I want to thank you so much, Howard, for sponsoring the show, and for coming out and talking to me about this issue, separation and divorce, and possibly one day it will become normalized, since half of us are doing it. Is that a pretty good statistic? About half of us are doing it?
It's about that. Maybe a little less now, but
Is
pretty
it?
much, yeah.
Oh, are we learning how to be married?
Possibly.
Oh, that would be nice. I'd like that. So before we close, too, I want to tell moms and dads about this book. If your children are 10 and under, called When Mom and Dad Divorce. I'll put this up on my website this evening. It's really nice. It talks about, you know, it's not the children's fault, and that parents feel sad as well. You can also send me an email, and I'll give you all the information in regards to it. Also this evening at 7:30 at the Richmond Hill Library, we will have our York Region Separation and Divorce group from 7:30 to 8:30, and that happens every 2 weeks, and I'm the facilitator. If you have any questions for Howard or I, we are very available through our websites and emails or phone number. Good luck to you, and I'm Angel Freedman. Thank you for tuning in today.